And welcome back. Another edition of Buy or Sell What the Hell. Today is July 3rd, day before Independence Day. Markets had a pretty good move. Dollars up, euros down. Bitcoin ripped the last two sessions. A few things we're going to talk about. We'll keep this episode pretty light, but I'm back here with Alec and Brendan as usual. No Noah today, but how are you guys doing?
Hey,
Doing
yeah,
well.
doing good. Good to see some energy back in the markets.
Yeah, big time. I was just looking at the futures volumes on BTC, but the move really started Sunday. So we've been talking about it. Just amazed me the amount of people. I'd like to see the numbers that BitMEX opened as far as people wanting to short the market. Nobody wanted to short it at 12,000, but now everybody wants to open up BitMEX accounts when the futures are trading with a 5,000 handle. Um, but I think we had a pretty good call. The buy zones between 5,000 and 6,000. We had a nice pop that started Sunday night,
Hmm.
and then we had another follow through move here Monday. So that's good to see. I think if
Yep.
we can crack this pivot here at 6,800, that'll really squeeze the shorts, and I like where we're sitting right now. What are your guys' thoughts on the price action?
I mean, like we talked about a few times now, there was just no reason. We didn't see a reason for it to go below there. It kind of looked like the floor,
Yeah.
and there wasn't any reason to think otherwise, really.
Yeah, I think the buy calls have been really on point. When you hit floors the way that we've had here in the mid sixes, and then it breaks and you don't see the confidence in selling and you see more of a buy side bid build. It just shows confidence of people really wanting to get involved in the space, not believing that it's going to go lower. And we talked about, you know, Bitcoin 5,000, and I was actually holding out for lower. I thought, I still have a couple more tranches I want to buy, and I haven't put those to the tape yet because it rallied right back up.
Yeah, we may not get a chance to buy that area. I was right there with you. Had some bits down there in futures, and that's all right. If we miss it, like we talked about, Brendan, you have plenty of opportunities to buy at higher lows on the way up. But and the media picked up Bitcoin yesterday for the first time. I mean, 10% move, and that kind of woke some people up. It seemed like so. I think it's all positive.
Yeah,
I agree.
and
It's
I
amazing
mean,
what happens to the general community when the media puts an influence, either positive or negative, and how that translates in the price. They have a lot of power.
Yeah, no, definitely. And we like to pay attention just from a sentiment perspective, like we talked about a couple episodes. I haven't seen Fox News talk about the euro in forever, spot price, and that was down when, the euro was down at 115. That was the low that exact day. And Bitcoin hasn't been in the news at all. Yesterday was kind of the first day. So I thought that was interesting. You could tell just in our stream and it seemed like on a lot of their feeds that people were getting a little bit more excited, a little bit more energy and
yeah, it,
enthusiasm from
it
people.
it really doesn't take a lot. I think a lot of that was there was a floor, and people were just waiting for some sort of catalyst to happen. There was, people were, you know, pretty negative sentiment, but something like Coinbase released custody is officially open for business for their institutional side. So I thought, I mean, that's a lot of people say all these different news items we've had the last few months are big news items. I mean, this kind of makes them all look pretty small. I don't know
Yeah.
about you guys, but I mean, that's kind of the missing piece there. Is we've been talking about is custody, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the institutional money has a door to come through now.
Yeah.
Right, and this is what needs to happen for the space. I think as the space matures and you start getting more big players in there, having, like we were talking about before, having proper custody, prime brokerage options, all these things are really going to help the space mature into what it's going to become. And we're seeing the entry level stages of this. So I think these are exciting, news alerts to see that Coinbase actually, is moving through with the custody. I'm excited about it.
Yeah. It's
Yeah, I
another
think I
step.
think they charge like 100,000 setup fee, 10 basis points per month, but it's in cold storage, and I think it's probably going to take like a day or two to process each deposit and withdraw. But no, that's very interesting.
Yeah, I want to read more about how it works exactly. Um,
Yeah, I
No, it's a good
wonder.
step. It's another good piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, I wonder who's going to be next. I'm thinking like Circle. What they're backed by Goldman. They recently bought Poloniex. They started a crypto trading desk. I bet they'll be the next ones right behind.
Yeah.
But
One of the more interesting bits, and I won't use any names here just because I don't know that that's appropriate just yet. But as large institutions start to move into the space, they're moving beyond crypto trading desks and crypto hedge funds. I spoke with an old COO of mine out of California. He just recently joined a group that just launched they have two crypto focused mutual funds. They're in the single digit millions as of right now, but they're forecasting to be at 500 million by the end of 18, which I think is interesting. The other thing that I have seen recently is one of the largest financial institutions that I bet everybody has money in or has had money in at some point is going a step beyond, and they're getting into the mining space.
I
Wow.
wonder. I wonder what that entails.
I will find out. They're actually doing it through my family right now, and I'm very interested to see what their motivation is. But they're starting with a decent chunk of miners, and I think it just shows it's not enough that it's going to move a needle for this size of a company, but I think they're starting to explore every avenue and what they look like and how they can grow into the space. That's how I read it.
It's kind of interesting that you bring up mining too for institutions because Coinbase is, I forgot where I read it, but it seemed like they were also planning to allow institutions and these larger holders to actually participate in like proof of staking. I think it's kind of an interesting dynamic because it's kind of same thing as mining. Coinbase, I mean, it kind of shifts. You don't actually have to invest in all that hardware. You could just have your assets sitting for at custody, something like Coinbase, and receive a dividend for like staking, like Ethereum will probably move to.
That's cool. Or you could run a master node? Maybe
I don't think they're doing any master node coins, but I think Ethereum, as soon as they move over, whatever other coins they start taking on. But I mean, all those ERC20 tokens, they're going to start taking on due to being a broker dealer now. They can take on all those ICOs, those security tokens. But I think it was kind of interesting that you mentioned mining when this also gives them an opportunity to stake as well.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. I like it.
Yeah. But we'll just keep going through these news items. Something interesting that we saw, it's kind of everyone buzzing around about, is that roughly $300 million worth of Bitcoin were transferred for 4 cents.
It's so cheap it blows my mind.
You mean they didn't do a Bitcoin wire?
I mean, I don't. If you ever run into anyone ever complaining about Bitcoin scaling, just kind of give them those figures. I mean, transferring hundreds of millions of dollars for almost nothing. I mean, they didn't compromise an inch of decentralization. I mean, what more could you really ask for? Yeah. And if you really still want to buy your cup of coffee with Bitcoin, just tell them to download a node and run Lightning Network, or wait a little bit longer for a more user-friendly client. But
did they say how long it took to go through?
I'm not too sure. I actually didn't. I don't know that. I don't know if you can know that.
Not days, right?
I don't know. I'd assume it took a little bit longer with that low of a fee, but I'm not too sure. That's still, even if it did take some time, that's still, they didn't ask anyone else's permission. No KYC, no ML. They just transferred $300 million.
That's cool.
I mean, that probably has to scare governments that someone can move 250 million like that. I'm kind of curious who is sending 200 million. I mean, 315 million is a lot of money in Bitcoin.
Yeah. Internet of money. I like it. Well, is that news today?
No, that happened a few days ago, but it's still pretty interesting.
All right, because the market hadn't really moved. I mean, market's doing the same thing, or it goes sideways with, it's like the retail market's still kind of asleep, just goes sideways, and then boom, out of nowhere, you get a big few blocks that go through, or somebody just lifts the crap out of the market. I guess it's just a little bit more of this big discrepancy between the institutional money that wants to get in and the retail crowd that largely just chases. So it's just like knee jerk one way or the other. I mean, I'd like to see another move up here towards 6,800. We're trading at 65.65. I'll lighten up a little bit more on the stuff we bought last week. We took some nice profits yesterday, so it's a win-win either way from here. Take a little bit more at 6,800 on Bitcoin, or if we get the pullback, I'm just going to add back to what we took off yesterday. I'd like to buy a little bit more under 6,500. Just kind of eyeballing that on the hourly right now. You guys want to talk the other coins here? Some of the other majors?
Yeah, let's run through what's Ethereum, Litecoin, Bcash doing.
Ether. I know we talked about this in the live room, and I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast, but we actually made a lower low, and we took off half our risk just playing defense because I didn't like that we broke 420, and so we ended up selling basically into the low, which occasionally happens, but I think it was smart because we were pretty much 95% invested on the cash side. So if we did test 360, 350 on Ether, which was the lowest from April, I didn't have a lot of cash to buy more there. So we played a little bit of defense and took some risk off, ended up selling the low. But sometimes that happens. That's why we didn't punt on all of it. And then I'm going to just put that right back on here on the next dip, which we're kind of getting right now. So we traded the low a couple days ago. It was 406 on the GDAX. We rallied to 480 just here yesterday or early this morning. I'm going to put it back on the next 4-hour cycle. But Ether's still pretty strong. It's when we look at it versus the majors on a relative value basis, it's still leading the way. It's definitely the richest of them all. And Litecoin's been the cheapest.
Well, Litecoin has been the cheapest. I mean, the moves that this thing has had, I just can't help it. I want to buy more of it. My problem with this is I just mine so much of it that I'm kind of participating at every level, anyways.
You already got the ASICs turned on the.
Yeah, they've been running since January.
Oh, that's nice. Well,
have you guys been following this whole Bloomberg, Kraken, Tether manipulation, red flag, defying logic?
It was pretty funny, the back and forth.
That's something you don't really see, like an institution, financial institution. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brennan and Jason, but you don't really see financial institutions kind of like bite back like that, do you? In that sort of way? Or...
Definitely not against the establishment. I mean, most of the big Wall Street firms are all buddy with Mayor Bloomberg up there. They don't have a lot of bad things to say. The other tough thing too is like if you get on these media outlets, if you're on Fox or CNBC, there's so many sponsors that you can't really get on there and criticize too many people, or they won't have you back on. Because there's so many of their clients are paying for advertising dollars that are on that show, so they're kind of not always as free to be, I guess, critical of the establishment. And Kraken and those guys are definitely a little bit off the cuff. We had heard a couple of them speak in Toronto, and I like the edginess. Some people might say maybe it was a little immature, though. At the same time, I'm fine with them punching back at Bloomberg a little bit. I mean, Bloomberg's been pretty one-sided on their politics as far as their reporting goes. It kind of gets a little bit, I don't know, a little bit obnoxious, and then just to see somebody that's that's disrupting in the industry kind of take the approach that they did was.
I'm completely fine with it. I like that they actually fired back, because there's been too many situations in our financial recent history that somebody firing back and standing up for what the truth is, or or just to defend their own company without any sense of repercussion I think it's healthy. I think I like that. I like that they fired back, and I like some of the points that they brought up. I mean, like we discussed in our chat room, the time frame in which Bloomberg came out with those comments was, it did raise a lot of quote unquote red flags. For those who have never been in the industry or really paid attention to options expiration days or whatever, if month end, quarter end, that was the thing that stood out to me the most coming from the hedge fund world. I mean, you're reporting monthly numbers to your investors, quarterly numbers to your investors. To have Bloomberg, let's just say for argument's sake that they were loose-lipped in what they were saying, and who knows what their intellectual integrity was before they published this. But I really applaud Kraken for firing back at them, because when you're at month end, quarter end, you're in a space that there's a lot of manipulation conversations going around, and it's not regulated, and therefore some people won't be as held as accountable as they would be if they were in the regular markets. But to have something like that go down, it really almost begs like we've been saying, we're buying the dips on the way down. There's no real reason in my opinion, for the sell-off. But when you get action like that and you read about news like this, it could influence people to sell, causing unnecessary weakness in the market. For those of us who are plugged into what can happen on expirations, month end, quarter ends, where people got to mark their books, mark to market. This is a really good bit of news, and I really feel like we didn't talk about it in the sense that this could be a strategy, for buying, certain levels or buying weakness, because you just don't exactly know what the reason is. But after the fact, you've seen Bitcoin rally back up, you've seen the coins, altcoins rally back up, and is it a coincidence that it was just after month and quarter end? And I don't know. I think it's again, I applaud Kraken for standing up for themselves, for announcing something like that to the public that may not be privy to what occurs on month end, quarter end, or expirations.
Yeah. And what is the consensus from the the narrative perspective, why we rallied, why we gapped up on Sunday? Alec, what would you say?
I think the Coinbase news, really.
Coinbase news?
I think that's pretty much I haven't been able to see anything else as a catalyst.
I agree. It's sentiment. It feels sentiment driven.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, the original story was from Bloomberg, and they were talking about Tether trading on Kraken's order books, about possible the weird amount of timing and transaction amounts, and they were indicating wash trading by a few professors. About taking both sides of the transaction there from Kraken, but then Kraken fired back like a week later saying, suspicious timing, the last business day of trading in quarter two, expiration date for futures contracts. And they pretty much fired back saying that Kraken is only 0.1% of Tether volume. So how much can that 0.1% really change the price of Tether that's traded among, probably 50 exchanges, 40 exchanges? And then they said pretty much everyone's shouting how much Tether is continually printed as well. It's kind of interesting. I haven't seen any other exchanges really flat out say that the Tether number is just so ridiculously small, and people are putting too much emphasis on it, because it's not even it's no real amount of money compared to how much that exchange takes in fiat daily. They said it's not even on their radar pretty much.
That was kind of my thoughts too. I mean, it's so tough to try to analyze what a firm, like a trading firm like that, especially crypto, when there's moving crypto around. And we've seen those charts that shows the flow, and this amount is flowing to this exchange and this exchange. It's just a different world. Like for some professors, they try to break it down, have never had real world experience with any risk on, or they don't know what it's like to trade around your order flow. I mean, Brennan, it's almost impossible to know who's got what on, where it's coming from, what dark pools. I mean, you can hide all the size you want on a trading platform. Like, we used a lot of eSpeed and broker tech. If I had 100 million tens I want to buy 3 ticks below the market, I show it as 5 million. There's 95 million behind it. Nobody knows, and that's if I decide to even put it on the screens, or go through some other dark pool.
Exactly. I mean, the one thing you never do is expose your full ticket size at any given level, especially as you have, computerized technology algorithms being able to digest news, be able to read inside markets. They can within milliseconds know exactly what, this type of movement, how it was calibrated, how much it moved, where it stopped. They can calculate so much stuff in fractions of a second. There's no way that any single human being can keep up with that price. So you're kind of subject to playing defense to their intelligence. And I just think that I just think that when you're looking at inside markets and you want to move size in certain things, there's so many other ways that I was able to do so on the marketplace, whether I was trading in the darks, whether I was bleeding it out in an algorithmic babysitter, if you will, or whether I wanted to put it up in the third. But you're right, nowadays, like, gone are the days, long gone are the days that you can call the floor of the exchange and say, hey, give me a picture, what's going on in IBM. And they'll say, okay, well, XYZ Bank was doing this. These guys are buyers and sellers. And then you can kind of quarterback your trade more appropriately. This space is different. And there's always ways of seeking liquidity, be it OTC or on an actual exchange, that things can get done. And, the volumes that we see aren't necessarily truly representative of what's actually going on in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm. And they were talking about, I think I was reading through the Bloomberg article, and they were talking about certain weird number of weird transaction amounts up to like 5 decimal places. And they were saying how, a counter order was made almost immediately after for that weird amount, which seems, unnatural, but I don't understand how they wouldn't consider arbitrage, to be some sort of, causation for those orders. I mean, arbitrage between these exchanges, I couldn't imagine how rampant it is.
Yeah, we've done it. It's like, there's nothing illegal about it. It's not, you're not manipulating the market. I mean, you're still taking risk. If you want to buy XYZ coin over on one exchange and then like move it to the other exchange and try to sell it, it still takes 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. If you get long something and the market moves down in that period of time, I mean, you still got risk.
Yeah, risk deserves reward, and the arbitrage side of it is just so out loud. It's been a conversation of ours for a while, and I'm sure as the computers get in, that'll tighten up a little bit. But right now, it's it's still relevant.
And it's a speed game. You got to be trading big size. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised the big players that are responsible for how Tether works and flows. I mean, if they're making the kind of money these exchanges are making, and they think Tether has really kind of gotten spread out, it's the spread's kind of widened out between, it's getting further away from where it should be pegged to par or the buck, and they step in and they buy a bunch of it. I mean, in a way, they're supporting the market. That's what you want, Yeah. Anyway, the manipulation stuff, it's so hard to figure out who's doing what, and
it's almost impossible to figure out.
It just seems more like, the crypto community needs something to write about.
I mean, it was kind of interesting. The second that Bloomberg article came out, I could remember crypto Twitter just one after another, everyone just knocking it for this reason, that reason, this reason. It's kind of interesting seeing the community kind of come together against something like that. The establishment.
When you're investing, I think it also just, knowing that there is some gamesmanship in the marketplace, fine. You need to, as an investor, need to know where you want to get in and out, and and you need to stick to your game plan. Because oftentimes I'll throw a bid out, so I like to buy it at these levels, and I'll see a similar pattern, which to me screams out, all right, this is an algorithm just trying to see what the getting a gauge for what the real buy and sell market looks like, and they're making investment decisions based on that, but they are taking risk, and they could be calculated wrong, and they may lose some money. They're largely going to win over the course of it, but it's just, as an individual investor, you have to know where you want to buy, you have to know where you want to sell, and you got to stick to your game plan. And if you're wrong, exit, reevaluate, and then come back in.
Yeah, well said. I mean, do you guys have anything to add? Just keep this under about 25 minutes. Short podcast for you guys' ride home or whatever you guys listen to this.
I think it's good from a trading perspective. I still think there's a lot of opportunity. I mean, if you guys have been kind of joining us as we go here, especially in our real-time alerts, I mean, we've had some really good calls. We bought a Mise Go right on the lows. It was perfectly timed with 2 cycles. That looks good. We bought Cardano really well. And I'm not just saying that to say, hey, this is, but it, you know, when you get a 20% rally and you buy the lows, now we're kind of at levels where you take some profit. From here, I'd like to get another pullback. I mean, even Bitcoin Cash double bottom basically in front of 600. But we're pretty bullish. I think this next, if you can get another 1 to 2 day pullback, it's a buy again. And I think 6,800 is what we look for on the upside on BTC. If we get above there, then there's definitely room to go back to 8,000-9,000. But yeah, we're bullish in here, and you know, the names we like are still kind of, we talk about here in our private room, private session. We'll kind of keep those names for the group, but the market looks good.
Yeah. If you guys want to stay up to date on the show, when it's going to be released, who's going to be on, follow us on Twitter. Buy or sell WTH is the handle. So, well, until next time, guys, I should have another episode by the end of the week on Thursday. So be sure to follow us.
Sounds good, boys.
All right. Good luck, everybody.
All right. Till next time.